Good afternoon, Wrestling Inc. Welcome back to Wrestling Inc. Daily. It's me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Tuesday to talk the pro wrestling news of the past week. You're not EJ Cameron at all. It's Paul.
I'm noticeably different. Some people have said, but others mistake us all the time.
Wow, it's Paul. Paul is here instead of EJ, and yeah, I thought I was talking to EJ, and as we were, no, this isn't EJ. That's Paul. Wow, so similar.
Here, let me do this. Do the pink glasses make the difference? Is that am I able to identify me now?
Yeah, we all know that's EJ's thing. He loves his pink glasses. Well, we have a great show here today. A lot of news for the past 24 hours to get into. Of course, Monday Night Raw was last night. Big show here. If you're in audio form, you're going to be able to hear right after the news block my latest conversation with WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley in the house here today. Always love chatting with Mick. And if you're watching us in video form, in about 26 minutes over on Wrestling's YouTube channel, we are going to premiere that interview with Mick. So you can jump from this over to that. Watch Mick. It's really good. Lots of talk all about the charity work he's doing, NXT, AEW, and of course, if Frank the Clown proposed to his daughter Noelle, would Mick approve of that proposal? I put him on the spot about that right at the end, Paul.
Well, I wish that you had asked him. I hope you asked him something about his big weekend at NWA too, because he was down there as well.
Yes. Well, Mick is very busy right now, so you'll have to tune in, find out what Mick talks about in this interview, and then after the interview with Mick, we all dive into the mailbag together. We're going to look at tonight's WWE NXT 2.0. The chat room is open. Jump on in, just like Samantha. Good afternoon, Gerard. Good afternoon. We have more Gary Lyles. Hi, Sam. Hi, Room. Hi, Gary. Happy Tuesday, says Jason Pock. Elizabeth Fox. Hey, Paul and Nick. And Doom Tribe T. Is that Lex Luthor? I think talking about you.
I would imagine that that individual is talking about me. And while I'm not yet known as a globally recognized supervillain, 2022 is a new year.
On the way. Well, with that
and more.
With that, it is time for news you can use, news that will leave a bruise. Let's get into it here. The whole wrestling world bruising, because as I wrote out here on our run sheet, Liv Morgan lost to Becky Lynch, who cheated like a lying cheater to beat Liv, and then everyone was mad. And then Angry Liv Girl became a thing, and that's how Raw ended last night. That's really all I want to talk about, largely from Raw last night. How did you feel about the main event?
In my opinion, this was the best way to end that main event. I do not think this is Liv's time to go over as a champion. I think they have a lot of rebuilding to do with her. One of the things that has always frustrated me with WWE is that they will take somebody that they have, 8 months prior spent just making them look like they are not a non-competitor, a non-threat, a non-challenge, and then change their mind and overnight turn that person into the champion. So for Liv, who went through exactly what I detailed, where she has not had a stellar track record over the last year, this is a rebuild process. And I know that people are angry in the short term, but in the long term, if they are going to invest in her, this will be the best way to do it.
Yeah, I loved it. And Becky just gets more heat, right? For all of the head scratching about Becky Lynch as a top heel. We're a couple months into it now, and it finally starts to be, it's kind of fun to boo Becky Lynch now. I think it's starting to finally click.
It is something that was unexpected, and people did not foresee the plans that they had for her. This was legitimately a scenario of, well, let's give it time and see how it works out, versus things like we have said that about in the past, where we're like, oh, let's just give them time. Let's see what unfolds. Let's see how this goes. And then there was either no payoff, or the payoff was as disappointing as we expected from the beginning. This is a situation where I think that what they're doing with Becky has long-term legs.
Yeah, 100%. And I felt bad for her during the whole Charlotte stuff, because it was, she was trying to find the groove she's in right now. And she got babied so hard by no fault of her own in that in that confrontation with Charlotte, and kind of stutter step to get to where we're at right now.
It seemed ill-advised to put two top heels against each other if you wanted either one of them to come out, with the same kind of heat that they generally go in with. Somebody is going to get that babyface rub, whether they want it or not, because people are going to be forced to take sides. And with all of the backstage news that was happening relating to Charlotte, which made it seem like she might be the real life villain here, that did not help it in any capacity.
Well, Elizabeth Fox, you're saying, I can't wait to see what they do with Liv after this. And how do you see this playing out? Do you think she picks up a couple victories to reassess herself? Do you think she continues to kind of become more downtrodden, kind of like what we're seeing with Nikki Ash right now, I guess, a bit over on Raw as well?
I have a very difficult time predicting what we're going to see in WWE because they don't seem to follow any of the tropes that have been tried and true or have worked in the past. They have a strong tendency to pull people from the depths of despair, meaning that they've completely ruined any of their credibility, as I just described what Liv had gone through for a full year, and then throw them in the main event for a brief period of time and then just return them to where they found them. Versus in the past, this event that we saw last night where an up-and-coming challenger faced the champion and looked great in defeat, making them a more credible challenger next time they step in the ring. That was tried and true. And I keep going back. I've said this before about other people, but this is exactly how NWA cemented Sting as a main event competitor to face off against Ric Flair. He faced him countless times, and Flair always did something dirty to get that victory. Sting gained more and more credibility. And when he finally became the champion, it didn't have that like flash in the pan feel that we see so often from people that they move into the main event roster and main event spots in WWE right now, only to have them fade away really, really quickly.
I mean, it feels like Liv Morgan's got to be considered the front runner for the Rumble right now.
Does it? I mean, I think that it could. I think that certainly that would be the next step in her evolution. It's very frustrating to me to watch people that we saw this exact kind of thing with last year falling somewhere into the mid card, nowhere in the conversation. People like Bianca Belair, right? Bianca Belair was on this hot streak, went into the Rumble, did what she did there, went on to WrestleMania, did what she did there, and now she's in the opening half of the show against Doudrop in a situation that does not seem to be really going anywhere for either woman other than giving them airtime, which is necessary just to at least keep them in the forefront of our thoughts.
Well, I was about to say she's getting more than most.
Yes, absolutely correct. But at the same time, do we see that confrontation between Doudrop and Bianca moving either competitor into a championship position? Probably not. But then again, WWE doesn't follow any trajectory based on like what would seem like a traditional one-loss record meaning something and leading to something. They just sort of say like, oh, this person's next in line, or they'll have a four-way scramble between women, and like all of a sudden that person is the new number one contender.
No. Looking ahead here to WWE Day 1, we got some backstage news from the Wrestling Observer saying that this whole pay-per-view, this is a Nick Khan idea. The current plan is for this event to become an annual pay-per-view. December pay-per-views traditionally do not do well when it comes to the holiday pay-per-views. It was said they have performed terribly or great historically, depending on the lineup. This is a big reason that Brock Lesnar and Roman match has been booked for Day 1. WWE is hoping to make a major event on the calendar, and the Universal Championship match adds towards making that happen. And they didn't feel they needed it for this year's Royal Rumble pay-per-view. I'll start with this. Thoughts on kind of the gimmick of we're going to do a show on New Year's Day every year going forward?
Well, I do think that there's some things to take into consideration. New Year's Day is often a very big day for football, and that could be problematic. The other part of it is, unlike a lot of holidays that they've traditionally done things on, they did, Survivor Series was Thanksgiving. We've seen Christmas Day events in the past. Unlike those things, New Year's Day is more of a day of people just sort of like recuperating, hanging out, recovering. So something that they can do while they're laying on their couch, like bemoaning the night before, doesn't seem a bad idea. I do wish that since this is a Nick Khan idea, we had the pink slip rumble, where everybody is fighting, and if you don't make it to the top 10, you get released by a text message from Nick Khan. I think that would have been a great gimmick. I think that, at least it would have been great because we know those are coming anyway. So at least it could have been the stakes could have been on it. It'd been fun to watch. But at the same time, I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm curious what they have lined up for the Royal Rumble that makes them think that something big like Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns is not needed for that pay-per-view.
Well, what I'm wondering is if it's always going to be day one, New Year's Day. This year they lucked out. I think New Year's Day is on a Saturday this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about when New Year's Day is like on a Tuesday, right? Like, do you still do day one, or do you do day one on day 363, right?
Why wouldn't they? Because people have that day off. No matter what day of the week it is, they have that day off.
But like you said, this is a day people are recuperating, had a hard night out. Who wants to go out on like a Tuesday for a 3.5-hour show only to go home and have to crash and be up for work the next day? I don't know, man. Like, I untested. I'll put it that way.
Right, but you're only taking into consideration one half of the equation. Like, yes, there is going to be a show somewhere on that day, right? But most of the money from that event is going to be through pay-per-view buys. And so those people who are sitting at home, oh God, I can't believe I did that last night. Like they're going to be there on the couch to watch the pay-per-view.
Okay, fair enough. So Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, they're going to be on this. They're putting a big match out there to kind of establish, this new pay-per-view gimmick here. It does feel like if you're going to stretch this thing all the way through the Rumble and WrestleMania, I don't know how you don't give Brock Lesnar the title in some fashion here at day one. Correct me if you think that I'm out of left field on that one.
It's possible, but the bigger thought that is at play here is one of two things. Either Brock does not ever get this title from Roman Reigns, and the next challenger appears by winning the Rumble or by a confrontation at the Rumble. And if all accounts that people are imagining are true, that The Rock might return for that big pay-per-view match against Roman at WrestleMania, that they would have time to clear all of this air and sort of like do a reset around the time of the Rumble, giving that Roman Rock WrestleMania match a build all the way through whenever that's scheduled.
Yeah, I feel like, in the back of my head, I still see Brock taking this thing. Roman, goes through the Rumble, dominant performance, sets up WrestleMania. I mean, it just seems too simple. But I guess for that reason, it probably won't happen.
I think that is certainly one way to look at it. I also think that one of the things that makes that seem so logical to us is that we've never, ever seen Brock Lesnar removed entirely from the title picture. And this is a time where Roman Reigns is strong enough in this role to remove Brock from that conversation, potentially setting up this ultimate dream match that people have been chomping at the bit for. Rock's one last go in WWE.
I don't know if it happens this year. Yeah, I don't know if they can get right. I don't know if all the stars align. I'm coy on it happening this year. I feel like it's maybe, I could be wrong. I don't know what everybody's itineraries look like, but I'm coy on Rock this year.
I think that that's possibly logical for you. And I think that it's not, I think that he's in a position where he's so in demand in other places. Maybe that's not the case, but I would look at the creative that they've done over the last year plus of him as champion and the whole bloodline thing. I think it has to come to a culmination very soon to establish Roman. I mean, Roman's already established, but going over on The Rock at WrestleMania or some, variation thereof is what is going to truly make him the superstar that they finally and always wanted him to be.
Can you imagine like he beats Brock day one, definitively moves past Brock. Brock goes away for a little bit. Out comes the Rumble. Number 30 hits, and it's The Rock, right? And The Rock wins the Rumble. And now we're going to get Rock going on his way to WrestleMania to be. That just is, it's salivatingly good, right?
And salivatingly bad at the same time, in some capacities, I think, because I think that it seems very predictable, but at the same time, predictable doesn't matter when it ultimately comes to the dream match that people have been aching to see, which is Roman versus The Rock.
Yeah,
that is like big money, and that's one of the biggest money matches I can imagine possibly headlining a WrestleMania right now.
Yeah, and I was there when CM Punk came back, and it was the worst kept secret. And sometimes just giving people something that they that they want, it could be fine. It could be okay. I'll throw Antonio Garcia here. He's saying, or you could see John Cena put his WWE career on the line this year. That could be another scenario. We already saw Reigns, John Cena. I don't know that we run that back this time right now.
I wouldn't run it back, especially now. I mean, he already dispatched rather, handily of John Cena.
Yeah, no more need. But also for day one, we're going to get Miz versus Edge. I'm going to guess the beginning for these two. I feel like between, Beth kind of in the wings and Maurice back, this is not the end of Edge and Miz.
No, it's this is just the beginning. I mean, they're building towards the start of this with these promo battles on Raw, as we saw last night and we saw previously. This is just building, and this is going to kick off, and it's going to give both of these, one is already a Hall of Famer. The other is a blue chip first draft Hall of Famer for sure in the future, no matter what you might think of Miz. And this is going to be a great program to keep two very high profile stars active, presumably as we head towards like some kind of a WrestleMania blow off.
Yeah. Well, former NXT North American champion Isaiah Swerve Scott, he shared a photo of himself and AEW star Malachi Black hanging out together recently. This did like maybe more traffic than anything else over the past 24 hours. Presently, Swerve is serving his 90-day non-compete clause with WWE. He also recently was spotted with TNT champion Sammy Guevara. Fans believe Swerve to be bound for AEW. Is it because I said it, serving his 90-day non-compete, as it was written on our website?
Did I chuckled?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because the very day that this whole posse was released, I tweeted, and it got absurd numbers of retweets, comments on it, that in my mind, WWE called Hit Row up to SmackDown for like a total of 2 weeks to trigger that 90-day non-compete, because they knew that they were massively talented, extremely over with a demographic that they apparently are not interested in tapping into. And they did not want their hard work and the work of Hit Row to get over the way they had to go anywhere else within shorter than 90 days.
It's interesting because Mick actually brings up unsolicited his love of Top Dollar in this interview that's coming up here just a little bit on the show, or video form if you want to flip over here about 10 minutes. And he talks about how, Top Dollar has a rap album. And he's like, I actually really like Top Dollar's rap album. And then when I went to tell him, like, hey, why isn't WWE doing more with your album? He was like, I guess Top Dollar told Mick, like, I don't even think they know that I have an album, Mick. There's just like a real out of touchness, a disinterest in becoming passionate in the way you're talking about, I feel like, right now in WWE.
I've always said, since we started doing this, now 8 months ago together, that I believe, and it's a track record WWE has solidified over and over again, that if you do not achieve whatever your success or, stake a claim for yourself within WWE, they are not interested in it. Because that means predominantly that, for example, if they did anything with Top Dollar's album and all of a sudden he started making money off of that, they don't get a cut of it. And they've made it very clear that they do not want you to have revenue sources that are anywhere outside of WWE. That can't be on your Twitch stream. That cannot be on your record. That can't be on anything that does not have WWE's stamp of approval.
Yeah. Well, and as far as Swerve going to AEW, I mean, I certainly think that he would be a welcome addition to that brand. I mean, diversity's been an issue, especially with the last 10, 12, 15 hires all kind of looking the same. Right? Yeah. Outside of Leo Rush. But I think that Swerve would really bring something to AEW, and I hope he does get a shot there.
I think, talent-wise, Swerve Scott can write his own ticket. In terms of what he brings to the table for any promotion, he can write his own ticket. And obviously, the place that most people want to go right now is AEW. When AEW collapses under the weight of their new acquisitions is a question that I've asked repeatedly, and it's something that I'm watching over and over again. I'm watching to see when that happens. They simply cannot support at a top level the number of high-profile acquisitions that they are getting without very quickly falling into the same category that that fans have complained about with WWE for years, and that is that they bring in these tremendous talents and just simply cannot or will not utilize them to their full capacity.
Well, talking about big hires, one of the big hires of 2021 for AEW, Mark Henry caught up with I-95 or I think it's I-90. It's a radio outlet. Anyway, Mark Henry, he's asked about a possible match in AEW. He says, ha, 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 ha. I mean, man, you just made me laugh. I'm not getting back in there. If somebody hits me, I'm calling the police. So Mark Henry kind of very blandly in a radio interview after years of kind of saying that he thought he had one more in him. He wanted to wrestle one match in his 50s. Suddenly he just has a change of heart. I guess he doesn't want to have a wrestling match anymore.
Well, I'm not shocked by that necessarily. Maybe I should be, because that's something that even AEW has teased repeatedly or implied outright, that he would be doing a combination of possible in-ring work and announcing work. Mark Henry is someone, honest to goodness, when I saw our headline about that on Wrestling Inc. about Mark Henry with his in-ring future or whatever, I'm going to be very, very blunt. I had almost forgotten he was even with AEW. Like, I don't watch the AEW Dark products or any of the YouTube products. There's simply too many hours of wrestling to watch a week. I can't keep up with all of it. And I've not been captivated by most of those shows, unfortunately, the way I would like to be. And I had all but forgotten that Mark Henry was on AEW. He did make an appearance a couple of weeks ago, sort of like in a very quick backstage segment. I found him bland in that. So it's not something that I'm going out of my way to look for.
He is the pre-main event interview guy on Rampage, right? So like but it's his involvement is literally 30 seconds each week, kind of saying the same thing over and over. And in the press he does for AEW, he talks a lot about how much he loves getting to do the community outreach and be a part of that. But it does, and I don't know really anything, but it does kind of feel like maybe things didn't gel right out of the gate, right? Like I can't, because he was supposed to be a commentary. They pulled him from that. Then he was talking about wrestling. Now he doesn't want to wrestle. Like, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I don't think this is what anybody expected Mark Henry to be used as.
I don't think so either. I will say that the best use of Mark Henry, in my opinion, is some of the things that they talked about early on, or AEW talked about early on. And it's to treat Mark Henry as that community ambassador, as that, goodwill ambassador, the way he seems to love that. It would be very comparable to what a lot of people who are under the WWE Legends contracts do. They act as goodwill ambassadors. They go places. They make appearances. That would be and Mark Henry is a striking figure in person, and he is a legend in the world of professional wrestling. Unfortunately, none of that is due to anything he's done in AEW, but at the same time, he is a recognizable name, and I think that they could get a lot of legs out of him doing community and charity work if they want to build that idea of goodwill between AEW and the community at large.
All right. Well, lastly here, AEW star Matt Hardy giving us an update on WWE star and his brother, Jeff Hardy, on Twitch. Now, quick overhead synopsis. Jeff was pulled from the Sunday WWE live event because something happened at the Saturday show. Have you seen the video, Paul?
I have not.
It is bizarre, man. This guy just rolls out of the ring, jumps a guardrail, and starts walking off through the crowd. Security completely caught off guard, chasing him. Drew McIntyre in the ring after the match, like, where's Jeff? What's going on right now? Very, very odd behavior, to say the least. So Matt Hardy, he's doing a Twitch stream, and he has the following to say about Jeff. He says, I did speak to Jeff for a little bit today, and he's okay. He's good. I think he'll be fine. But once again, this isn't my business. And if he wants to go into it in more detail, then he'll do it himself. But like, Jeff is okay. He is at home and he's okay. Any thoughts on what Matt had to say here about Jeff?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is, if you're listening to this in audio format, my face is very grave right now. This whole incident, as soon as I read about it with Jeff Hardy, it hit me in a different way. I remind people it's not a secret. I am many years in recovery from a drug and alcohol addiction. And so watching people, like a Jeff Hardy, who has gone through the public eye, dealing with very similar issues, takes on a different level of connection to my own life experience. And when I read about this initially, the first thing obviously that comes to mind is that, there could be some backtracking in his progress into behaviors that have caused a lot of concern for people in the past. So I hope on one level, I hope Jeff Hardy nothing but the best. And I hope that he gets himself back together in whatever capacity is going on very, very quickly. The part relating to Matt, however, I think is the healthiest approach that he can have. No, again, speaking from firsthand experience, like, decisions one individual makes, no matter how close they might be to you in your personal life, whether that's a partner, a brother, a sibling, a parent, whatever, those are decisions and actions that we can't control. And trying to control that, as I imagine Matt probably did for many, many years, because their careers were so intricately and closely tied to one another, becomes emotionally exhausting. And it's a very unhealthy place to find yourself. I also think that it's very respectful to his brother to say, hey, I can't speak for him. Like, we're brothers and I love him, but whatever he's going through, I'm not even sure about it. So when it's time for him to speak, he'll speak. The best any of us can do is send him our best wishes and keep him in our thoughts and prayers, as like trite as that is. And I hate when people say thoughts and prayers when in horrible crisis. But nonetheless, like, this is a situation that is tremendously sad. And I think that it speaks to some of the dangers that people experience if they are, isolated from support groups, support mechanisms, people who are probably close to them, by being on the road constantly.
All right, Paul. Well, I want to thank you for joining me at the top show to talk all the news today, especially that insight on what's going on with Jeff right now. Really appreciate you bringing your own personal, story into it. It always helps people relate. I can't
speak again for him, but I'm just saying that as somebody who's been through something similar, when I look at this, I'm like, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope that he just had a shitty day. And I hope that, whatever. I hope that I'm not right, but my gut says that, some of the demons and challenges of the past have possibly come back to haunt. And it doesn't mean that he can't overcome them and move forward the way he has been. It's just going to take a little work.
All right. Well, I also want to thank Mick Foley, by the way, of course, for coming on. Great many charitable things that Mick's doing, but of course, Hearts of Reality going on. I think Friday is the day he's going to be participating. So more information, we're going to have a post up here on the site very shortly about that. And Mick, you're great. We're going to real briefly dive into the mailbag because we're pretty much out of time. The Mick Foley interview is about to start over on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel right now. But today's poll question was, what are you most excited about going into NXT tonight? And it's a blowaway. About 150 votes, 90.7%. All anybody wants to watch tonight, Johnny Gargano's address. They're giving the guy a live microphone. What are your is he gonna come out and say, I'm NXT till I die? Is he gonna say it's been a great run and out comes Joe Gacy to lay him out and rip his throat out on the way out? What do you think's happening here with Gargano?
It's a real toss-up for me, because WWE is not known for giving people on their way out an opportunity to speak. They usually send them out on a stretcher and put somebody over in the process. So part of me thinks that Gargano is staying. You know, he's there to stay. And this could be a reinvigoration of that. I want to say that one of the things that was very interesting to me about that poll was that a variety of people basically indicated they just stopped watching the product. And that I think is very accurate. I was a diehard for this product until the reboot, and they introduced so many people so quickly that I had no connection to, that I felt lost and just basically gave up.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, I'm excited about tonight's NXT. I thought War Games was a really fun show, and I'll see what they do here tonight, and we'll go from there. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. The Mick Foley interview is starting like right now, so if you don't want to watch the outro, you can just jump over right now as it is. But if you're in audio form, come back tomorrow. It's going to be me. It's going to be Brian Wool. We're gonna be doing more of this, more news punting. I don't know if we'll have an interview or not. I think we're gonna wait till Thursday to run the next one. But if you support Wrestling Inc. Daily, sportwrestlinginc.com, where all the socials. The Wrestling Inc. podcast is at night after all the big shows, including tonight after NXT. And if you're in the Chicagoland area this weekend, 2 chances to come hang out with Nick Hausman. Saturday, I'll be hosting the Headlock Comics panel at C2E2 here in Chicago. So you can come out to that, ask a question, come say hi before or after. And then, of course, Sunday, 4 o'clock, I'll be back at Warrior Wrestling doing commentary. If you want to come out to that, say hi. Or if you're watching us live on Fight, feel free to tweet me. Let me know what you think of the show. But a couple ways to find me this weekend in the Chicagoland area. Paul, anything you want to put over here before we wrap up the show today?
Absolutely. I am very excited to say that in the very next coming days, you'll be able to catch me on an Out Sports podcast with Kevin McElvaney, the editor-in-chief of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, as well as Brian Bell, who runs the QWI 200, which celebrates the LGBTQ plus wrestlers in the wrestling space. I'm going to be talking about the QWI 200. I want to congratulate all of the fantastic wrestlers from around the world who are representing the community of which I'm so proud to be part, and doing what we love and are passionate about in the world and space of professional wrestling. Look, yep, right behind Nick. So there's that. Also, Nick, I got a big update on, it's going to be on December 16th that Out Sports announces the results of that fan voting, where this podcast with us too was nominated for Podcast of the Year in the LGBTQ plus space. So there's that. I also just want to tell everybody, check me out on Twitter. I never put my Twitter over. It's right underneath me. It's the Glamazon PDM. It's a great way to connect with me. And then connect with me on twitch.tv/Pollo Del Mar as well. So that's it.
Wow. Well, and I am at Nick_Hausman over on Twitter. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm going to talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked,